Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 4 of For the Love of Hockey podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, and today we have a very special episode. Yes, that is right. We have our first guest on the podcast. If you guys don't know him, he is a producer of The Rod Peterson Show, host of the Squadcast, and you might even know him for his TikToks where he makes videos all about sports. Please welcome my good friend, Clark Monroe, to the show.
Hey, how's it going? This is exciting. I'm pumped that I can be your first guest. This is great.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
So me and you share quite the common interest in hockey. And I was just curious, where did your love of hockey come from?
Growing up in Saskatchewan, there's not a whole lot else to do. So I would say, my dad was a big hockey fan. My brother was a professional hockey player, so he got me into it early, going to watch his games, as he was growing up through junior and all those ranks. So I was pretty into it early on. Big hockey night in Canada family. Where it's the classic, like sit down in front of the TV and watch a game on Saturday night type thing. So I would say it started way back and kind of developed into, as I was going into university, I actually wrote a blog for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it was on the third, website you've never heard of. So I did that for a little while. And after university, got a job in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. I worked in Estevan with the Estevan Bruins, which morphed into the WHL with the Regina Pats. And then after we hosted the Memorial Cup here, they made some changes and a few staff were let go. I was one of them, unfortunately. Oh. But what that led to was now I'm the producer for a big sports talk show here in Regina. And we are a national show, I would say. So it's worked out for the best. And here I am now. I got a TikTok channel and host my own podcast on Tuesday nights. So it's turned into something really great, and it's been a fun little journey for the last couple of years.
Good. Now, I know you're from Saskatchewan, and I would say a lot of Saskatchewan people probably cheer for more of the Western Canadian teams. Now, I'm just curious, how old were you when you fell in love with the Leafs, and why did you?
Growing up here, the Jets weren't around, so there was some sad Jets fans. But when I was 3 through 9 or so years old, like I didn't even know the Jets were even a thing anymore. Like it kind of got eliminated. So a lot of people here are fans of the Oilers and Flames. You get the odd Canuck fan, but it's mostly Edmonton and Calgary. And then the diehard traditionalists that have their grandpa's bloodlines passed down and their uncles and their brothers, and they're all Leafs fans or Canadians fans. But so there's a few of those, but my family wasn't Leafs fans growing up. Not many of my friends were. I had a couple that were fans of them. And when I think it was when I was 9 years old, I played my last year of novice hockey, which I think again is 7, 8, and 9 years old. I played on a team in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan called the Maple Leafs. And my number matched Steve Thomas's number, Stumpy. So I was number 32. And it turned into me just kind of, watching the games, looking for Steve Thomas. And my buddy, whose dad was my hockey coach at the time, they kind of forced me into, liking all the players on the team at the time. Sergei Berezin was on the team, Thomas Kaberle. Sundin was just getting going there. So it was a good time, I guess, because they were good for a few years. So I jumped on, and like I said, there's not many Leafs fans here. So for a lot of years in my teenage years, like they were really bad, and there wasn't much to be proud of. So I never really wore any gear. Everyone knew I liked the Leafs when they talked to me, but I didn't really show it off. And just in the last 3 or 4 years, I started buying some stuff. I have my hat that you can see. I don't know if your listeners will be able to see it or not, but it turned into me kind of showing it off a little bit more. And now on TikTok, I'm constantly wearing my hat, and I got all the stuff. So it's been a lot of fun kind of showing that off in the last few years.
Good. So obviously you're from Saskatchewan, and a former Leafs coach now was raised in Saskatchewan too. Now, Mike Babcock, I thought when he came in, I thought it was a really good move for the Leafs. It kind of pushed us in the direction that, hey, we're heading in the direction that we're going to be good in a couple of years. I mean, someone of his pedigree, he brought, he won Stanley Cups, he won gold medals at both the junior and the NHL level. Now, I think when he came in, his goal was to develop our young guys into who they are today. But where do you think was the turning point to him eventually leaving, and where do you think he went wrong?
Sure. It's a great question. And, I think there's a lot to that. But the way I look at it, you mentioned it, his job when he came in was to really change the culture in Toronto. And, they went from a team that was constantly firing coaches. They hadn't had a winning season in a long time. They hadn't had a playoff series. They hadn't made the playoffs in a long time. They didn't have any star players, and the ones that they did, how it was. Everybody ran them out of town because they weren't good enough. And his job when he came in here was to just do a total reset. And I think that was achieved. I think over the first 3 years or so, his message was, work my way, do my stuff, or get out. And that worked. It worked for a few years. They set a franchise record for points. Like he did what he was brought in to do. But I think after a while, with the team as young as it was, the veterans were all getting shipped out of town because they wanted to shift it all. And I think his message just wasn't reaching, that group anymore. And, again, with the young guys, he wasn't connecting with them in the right ways that he was connecting with, his team with Detroit that he had for a few years. It was all guys who were well established. They were in their 30s. They could take his type of coaching. The majority of the team when he got fired in Toronto was all 25 or younger. They had modern ways of thinking. And the general manager, Kyle Dubas, of course, is also a younger guy, younger than Babcock. So he had a different way of thinking and doing his work as well. So I think what that led to was just a difference in belief, a difference in philosophy. And you could see it. There was tension every night. There was tension in that year that he got fired, which, by the way, was last year. It seems weird to say, but it was last season.
Yes, it does.
I still think about that. And I'm like, how is that last season? That feels like it was years ago. But you saw it. You saw it on the ice. Players were getting frustrated. You saw it in media scrums. All the interviews were just tense, and all the decisions that Dubas was making to change the team's roster seemed to kind of fall by the wayside. Jason Spezza would get sat. Justin Hall wasn't being played, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to go down the list, but it just seemed like nobody was on the same page. And by bringing in Sheldon Keefe halfway through the year, there was like a breath of fresh air. Everybody just seemed to be going in the same direction. And I think that's the biggest difference this year compared to last year is that, everybody's on the same page and they're rowing the same at the same time type stuff. And that's been the biggest difference. And that's why I think you've seen such a high winning percentage this year out of the Leafs compared to last year. It's the same team essentially, but the difference is that they all have the same mindsets and they're all on the same page. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, obviously, he did do a lot of good work in Toronto while he was here, and I was watching a podcast that you're in. There are a couple of Montreal fans that you're on, and they had mentioned William Nylander. Now, when William came into the league, I think all Leafs fans were kind of expecting, oh, he's going to be a top goal scorer and everything. And when Mike came in, he kind of jolted William in the way that, okay, like offense isn't the only way to win a game. And it kind of shifted towards developing his defensive side. Now, where do you think William has kind of improved since Mike Babcock came in and now having Sheldon with the Leafs?
Oh, great question. So I feel like William Nylander's game, I feel like he wasn't as good as this guy, but I now looking at Patrik Laine in Columbus, and I'm starting to think that John Tortorella is trying to take the same approach that Babcock took with William Nylander, but it's not working. And so what needed to be done with Nylander was he was all offense all the time. He wasn't back checking. He wasn't positioning himself correctly. He wasn't physical. He's still not physical at all. But that was one thing that Babcock kind of sat him down and said, you could tell that a lot of times his focus was, getting him in the position defensively to change the style that he plays. And I think it worked to an extent. You don't see William Nylander winning the Selke Trophy anytime soon, but the way he's changed his mindset, where he will, he'll rush back instead of lollygagging back to back check. His play in the neutral zone is much better. He's way more active with his stick in the defensive zone, so he's stealing the puck a lot. And I noticed that shift. I noticed it more last season, which is Babcock's last season, because I was focusing on him. I think if you watch that interview, I wanted to check if I liked William Nylander. So one of my goals at the beginning of last season was I'm going to watch Willie specifically, and I want to see if he has changed, or if he is this player that, all the people are writing about that he should be traded, and they still write about that. But so I was watching him a lot, and I noticed a lot more emphasis on him back checking and him, sneaking up behind a guy and lifting his stick and stealing it. And the other thing I notice is, and if you watch this year, he's the best Toronto Maple Leaf at getting the puck out of our own zone. And I don't say that in like just dumping it off the glass, but if he gets the puck in the Leaf zone, it's getting out of the zone. And you can't say that about a lot of players on the team, but he's so good at finding a way to get out of the zone and then putting it into the offensive zone, whether that's him carrying it, him dumping it in, which he doesn't do very often, which is fine. But his ability to create zone exits, which is like a fancy term now that a lot of people use, but I think he's got to be the best on the Leafs. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but that's one thing that I think has changed just drastically in the last 2 seasons, is his ability to steal the puck and get it out of the zone is now there, and it wasn't before. So I think it worked. Like you said, I think Babcock's efforts worked. And now you see Keefe trying to get him going offensively again. And it seems to have worked a little bit because his numbers are doing great. So he had a 30-goal season last year, for example. So yeah, I like the where he's going. And, I'm still on the keep Nylander train, where a lot of people are still talking about trading him every couple of weeks. It pops up. Yeah. Actually, TSN last week on one of TSN's broadcasts had a quiz. Who would you rather have picked if you could go back? William Nylander or Nikolai Ehlers? And I was like, why is this still coming up? Can we stop, please?
Yeah.
But that's TSN for you.
Yeah, it is. Now, one of his line mates, I think, who was obviously a big free agent signing when Babcock was coaching us, was Tavares. And I think over the past couple of seasons, there's been a little bit of a shift in how John plays his game. And you saw it. I think it was the first season that he came over. He scored like 47 goals with Mitch Marner on his side. But I feel like Mike kind of shifted a little bit of the defensive side, and even more now with Keefe. But do you think Babcock utilized him well, or do you think now with having Keefe as the head coach, John has like that bigger role? Because I have noticed that he's more of the defensive face-off guy now.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely had a shift, and I don't know if that was his choice. In his first season here, you have to remember that the center depth was Matthews, Tavares, and Kadri. So there was 3 guys who they could put out in a lot of different situations, but Kadri was usually used as the guy who would mirror the best players on the other teams. And since Kadri's gone, Alex Kerfoot's not that guy. I don't know if they've really even tried, but he's not that guy. So what they've done is they've shifted John Tavares into a guy who plays against McDavid every night, who plays against Scheifele every night, who plays against Elias Pettersson every night. Well, not now because Vancouver's having some troubles, but he's playing against the best players, which has led to a downturn in offensive stats because they're using him in a different way. And when we say that, like, he's having a bad year, he's pretty much got a point per game. So I know that, it's not the 47 goals, but he's still producing. it's just the Toronto media loves to jump on guys when they're a little under what they're used to. So yeah, I would say that what Keefe has done this year is out of necessity. He's used him as a defensive forward in terms of line matching, especially during home games where you can actually do line matching as correctly as you'd like. So he's been that shutdown center. So I would love to see if the Leafs could. I don't know if at that deadline this is a priority for them or not, but if they could bring in a guy who could be a shutdown third line center or even a shutdown fourth line center, who they can even take like half the time away from Johnny having to be that guy. I bet you would see a spike in goals. I bet you would see a spike in numbers. But out of necessity, that's just where they're at. And I think you've seen it in Williams' numbers too. Like with Nylander playing with him, I don't think that you've seen as much production out of him either. But it's interesting too, going back to our last discussion, that Nylander's defensive game has improved, and he's on Tavares' line, which is the shutdown line. So that to me is very interesting, and not many people talk about it, and I'd like to see it kind of brought up more. So I'm pushing the wagon here on trying to get it going on. They're defensive guys now, and nobody likes to talk about that because their numbers are down.
Yeah, well, yeah, even with Williams hits, I've noticed his stats have like gone up in hits even, and he doesn't hit a lot.
No.
But from a fantasy standpoint, it helps out a lot because he's already doubled maybe his stats from the past season, which I think is really good. But so the reason why I brought up Tavares is because he's on a list of a few players that were in the CHL that were granted exceptional status by the CHL. And now, as of last March, there's another 15-year-old who I know you have gotten to take a look at because you work for IKS Media in the WHL bubble. Now, yes. I'm just curious, how do you think Connor Bedard fares up against the other exceptional status kids at 15 so far?
So it's very interesting. And, I posted, I've been talking to everybody today about this because over this weekend, I posted a video about him. I didn't even plan on posting it. It just kind of popped up. Like one of my buddies, Jamie in Halifax, he sent it to me, and the original video from the guy that I stitched. Sorry for the TikTok terms, but it's okay. So he sent me this video, and I was watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is a great video. I'm glad that he posted this, but he used the wrong picture of Connor Bedard. Mm-hmm. And it was his teammate Carter Massier, and he didn't really give any reasons why people should follow him other than the fact that he said he's ripping it up in the WHL. So I was like, I'm just put this out there and see, I want to make sure people know that he's like really truly ripping it up. I want to give actual numbers and reasons behind this. So I posted the video. I was thinking it might get 1,000 views. I wasn't even worried about that. I just checked; it's at 190,000 views. And I'm sure you know who this guy is, but his handle is That Leafs Fan. And he just made a video that's nearly identical to mine. And my nephew tagged me in it. And he's like, hey, this video looks familiar. And I was like, oh, weird. Like, it's like identical to the point where like every point I make, he basically copied over it. And I was like, I thought it was funny. I'm not worried about that at all. But it's starting to take off. But the difference to me when you talk about actual Connor Bedard, not my TikTok video, is that he's a bit of a slighter frame than a lot of those guys. So when you compare him to like Johnny Tavares, at 15, John Tavares was like a grown man. Aaron Ekblad, I think, was an exceptional status player. He was like a monster at 15. Yeah. So, when you compare him to guys like that, Shane Wright's a thick kid. Connor McDavid was taller, at least. I'm trying to think back to all the exceptional status players. Joe Veleno was even at least, an average size. Connor Bedard is a little smaller, but he's mature way beyond his years. We've talked to him a couple of times on our show that I produce, not my own show, but the one I work behind the scenes on. And, we talked to him when he was 14 years old, and he sounded like he was already in the NHL, like the way he was answering questions. Wow. And so like his brain is on a different level than a lot of the players who might have been bigger. and granted exceptional status because they were just physically dominant. He works differently. His shot, you're a Leafs fan. I would compare it to Austin Matthews in terms of how good it is. He's able to quick release. His ability to get off weird angled shots where it just fools the goalie, even though it looks like just a regular shot. Like when I first saw it at the Dub Hub, which is what we're calling it, I was like, that's Austin Matthews. That looks exactly like it. I've been watching Austin Matthews for 4 years now, pretty closely. And I was like, that's it. He's not extremely fast, but he's faster than you think. And his ability to just get around guys is wild. His stick handling is Mitch Marner level stick handling. So that kind of stuff is going to put him in a whole different category when it comes to the exceptional status players, because he's such a purely offensive player. And I'm going to be curious to see, like, when he's draft eligible, is he going to be good enough defensively to jump into the league right away, or is the team that picks him, are they going to make him wait a little bit? I'll be curious to see, because it's so hard to predict 3 years from now what he's going to be like. But he's already getting a chance with Hockey Canada for the U18s, which he's a double underager for that one. So they're already putting some faith in him. He's going to be there with Shane Wright and all the names you would consider for the upcoming draft. He's going to be there with all of them. So it'll be interesting at that tournament, which is only I think it's like a month away. I'm going to be curious to see how he produces there and how they use him there, I guess, because they might not use him at all. But I would hope that with him being there, they'll put him on a pretty good line and see what he can actually do. And just keep an eye out for him on that one, because that'll be the true test. Because, the argument right now, sorry to keep going on this, but the argument right now is at the WHL hub, it's just the East Division. And there's a few weaker teams in that East Division. There's also not European players. There's been a few players who have stayed in the NHL. There's been a few players that have gone down to the United States Hockey League because it was playing earlier. So they went down there and then they couldn't come back. So the talent pool might be a little bit weaker, but the fact remains he's leading the entire WHL in scoring as a 15-year-old through 12 games. It's not a small sample size. And there's I think there's six or seven other 15-year-olds that have been able to play this year because of COVID wrecking their seasons with their other teams. I think the leading guy behind Connor has 8 points as a 15-year-old. So he's separated. You can tell it's a major difference.
Now I did see this on your TikTok, and Connor is the first WHL player to get granted exceptional status. And I saw this comment and he's like, oh yeah, but the dub isn't as competitive and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, to a certain extent, he made exceptional status and he made it to a junior A team. Like, I'm just curious, do you think that he would be doing as well over here in the OHL, considering everybody says that the OHL is better? Or
right. So that was one. It was more than one guy. Trust me, I was watching my comments on that video, and it blew up way more than I expected. So I was double watching it. And there was lots of people that were probably, I'm assuming they're from Ontario, and they said, the OHL is better. He wouldn't be doing that good if it was here. And I don't know. I think the argument is okay. I get it, because there's a lot of stars that are from the OHL. And so it's easy to see, McDavid and Stamkos, I think, played in the O, and all those guys. You don't have to name them. They're all at the top of the stats leaderboards. Just go look at the NHL stats. They're all there. Mitch Marner, et cetera, et cetera. But it's easy to see that and think that automatically the OHL is better because they produce more stars. But the WHL produces the guys that are hardworking, are gritty. They're your third line goal scorers that teams want every year at the trade deadline. They produce some stars too. Look at Matthew Barzal. He's out in New York doing his thing. I don't have to again name too many guys because there's enough of them out there. But I think the WHL gets a reputation that they don't have the star power, but they still produce just as many NHLers. They still win just as many Memorial Cups. They still have, there was more WHLers on the World Junior team this year than any other league. So like they still do have those players, and it's not like a joke. I saw one guy compare it to on my video, compare it to a beer league, and I was just blown away. I don't know if that's the perception if it was Ontario. I don't even know if he was from Ontario, so I'm not going to paint everybody with a brush. But this particular person was just like way off track on what it is. So I think it's a little bit misleading to say that it's a worse league. This year it might be different because of the rules, but it's just as good as any other league in Canada, I would say.
Yeah. Now, I'm actually kind of surprised that some of the OHL guys haven't gone there, because the OHL isn't happening this season at all, considering we're in another lockdown, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Which would have made it a little bit more competitive, but I miss junior hockey here in London. So I'm glad that you guys have the hub city over there in Regina to take a look at that young talent. Now, do you think he's like Connor is considered the next one, or do you think it's kind of too soon to assume what kind of talent he is in the NHL?
Yeah, for me, it might be too soon, again, just because of his frame. If he was a bigger kid, like if he had Shane Wright's body, I would say, yeah, for sure. If he was doing everything he was doing and was the size of Shane Wright, I would say yes. But because he's more, let's call him more of a Mitch Marner type of player, I would have to wait, because you've seen enough of those types of players not be able to succeed when it does become a little bit more physical. But we've also more and more nowadays, that's the type of player that's putting up big numbers. You see Alex DeBrincat, he's smaller than Connor Bedard. Like you see guys like Cole Caulfield, everyone's talking about him right now. So the small player is not a thing that people shy away from anymore. And he's still got a ton of room to grow. So I don't know how that's all going to work. I'm not the body expert necessarily, but I would say right now I would pump the brakes a little. But as soon as the media hype train gets on it, I don't think you can stop it. It'll start taking over. If he does really well at the under 18s, then I might start thinking, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the guy. Right. He's definitely showing me signs of a guy who will be a top 5 pick. But there's too many factors to me that are kind of just slowing me down. I'm trying to play it slow with this one, because I don't want to put too much pressure on him, and I don't want to overdo it. So I think he's definitely got the ability and potential to be, everyone says the next Connor McDavid. I don't know. We'll see about that. But, a guy like Mitch Marner, I could see him being very comparable to.
Right. Yeah. And Marner lit it up here in the OHL with like 120 points in one season. So if he's anything similar to him, then whoever gets him has a great
well, we got lucky here, because right after Marner was done in London, we had Leafs prospect Adam Brooks and Sam Steele, who's now on the Ducks. They at the same time had 130 point seasons the same year. And that was the year we lost to Seattle and Matthew Barzal, by the way, in the WHL finals. And then Seattle went and blew it at the Memorial Cup. So we're still pretty salty about that. But other than that, like, we're used to seeing pretty talented players here in Regina. We've had Jordan Eberle. We've had Jordan Wheel, who's still playing around in pro. We've had a ton of guys come through here. So, it's going to be fun to start comparing him to these other players as he gets older and older. It'll be awesome.
Are there any nicknames that we should start calling him, or is there anything already started for nicknames for Connor there?
For Bedard?
Yeah.
Well, Rod Peterson, who's the host of the show I work for, he's the voice of Regina Pats hockey for a TV company here in town, and he's been calling him like the holy child and the savior, and he started pumping the brakes, because he was like, I can't keep calling him this. This is too much. So he's just been calling him all sorts of stuff like that. But I don't know, it's weird. It's a weird year, because we haven't been able to communicate with these players, especially in the media, but like we're normally used to. Like in a normal year, Connor Bedard would be in interviews every day, and he'd be doing he'd be doing appearances on all sorts of shows. But because it's such a weird year, and I think they're trying to shelter him a little bit. He's already been on TSN 20 times and Sportsnet, and Sam Cosentino interviewed him like the day before or the day of our first game here in Regina. So it's like, we're trying to keep it a little subdued. But Rod, his original nickname for him was Justin Bieber on skates because he had the haircut and all that. So maybe you can start calling him Justin Bieber, the hockey Justin Bieber or something like that. But I don't know if that'll stick.
Yeah. Well, we'll see in the future. Now, before I go, I was very excited to have you on because I get to talk to somebody about the Leafs. Now, yeah. Obviously, the Leafs are at the top of the standings in the North. What do you think the Leafs need to do at the trade deadline here?
Yeah, so that's one that I've been like every time I go live or I'm talking to anybody, even on my own show, the Squadcast on Tuesdays, over on our Facebook page, you can watch that. But every time we're live, everyone's always asking me, what should the Leafs do? And what should my team do? What should the Jets do? What should the Canadians do? And it's such a hard year because we don't know, who the sellers truly are outside of like the Sabres, maybe the Devils. But outside of those teams, like every team has a chance to go on a week-long heater and get into a playoff spot. Like even the Flames right now, and we're talking, I don't know when you're posting this, but we're talking on a Leafs Flames game day. If the Flames lose tonight, everyone's saying, they're done. But, if they win 4 in a row and Montreal starts losing some games, they could still be in a playoff spot. So those teams, there's a lot of teams in a really weird scenario where they might not want to sell, but they might not want to buy, or maybe they aren't sure if they want to sell or buy. So it's like a weird year, and plus the COVID restrictions and the trading, the border rules and everything. But if I were the Leafs right now, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but if you could get somebody to take over a defensive center role, I would really love to see that. My guy that I keep pushing for is Boone Jenner. I would love to see Boone Jenner from the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think he would be such a perfect fit. And he could just be a pest, kind of like Kadri was when he was here. A defenseman would be really nice. And then the goaltending debate, like that's going to come into play too. And a lot of people say like, oh, well, what do you think they should do with Freddie? That's $1 million question. Like, if you know the answer to that, please let me know, because I think we could make some money somehow. But, he's clearly got something going on. But the hard part about him is he's got a $5 million contract. And they're kind of hamstrung with that contract if he's not going to do anything, if he's not going to play, or if he plays badly, then that's even worse because they could be spending that on something else that they really need. So I would say priority number one for me would be if they could get like a really good shutdown type of defenseman. Priority two, which is more of a want, would be a center who could kind of take over a shutdown role. And then question three, it's not even a priority, but what's going on with Freddie? Is Freddie going to be traded? Is he in the future plans for the team? How can they do that? First off, I don't know. It's going to be crazy with Zach Hyman contract coming up. Morgan Riley's contract is next year. So if he comes back at $5 million or more a year, like, can they do that? So there's a lot of question marks, and I don't know if they're all going to be answered at this trade deadline. I think it's going to be a crazy offseason. And then again, another thing I totally forgot, Seattle, the expansion draft. And that's going to play that's the reason that Zach Hyman doesn't have a contract extension right now, is because they don't want to have to protect him, I would think, at the Seattle expansion draft. They can leave him exposed. Seattle picks him. Great. He's coming back. He's going to sign a free agent deal with Toronto. Maybe Freddie, they want to protect Jack Campbell, so they don't give Freddie a contract extension. Freddie's a UFA, comes back at a decent rate. So there's a lot of question marks, and Seattle's in there too. And I think a lot of GMs are hesitating right now in a lot of ways. So I think it's going to be a crazy year, because not only that, but a lot of teams are probably just bleeding money right now. So how many teams are going to want to just try to dump off contracts, even little ones? That's where the Boone Jenner thing comes to mind, because he's making 3.5, I think 3.7, 3.25, somewhere in there, $1 million a year. How much does Columbus want to pay that contract right now, especially if they're not making the playoffs? So there's a lot of questions that come into it. My priority would be, I'd love to see a defenseman, maybe the shutdown type of penalty kill type of center, and then an answer in goal. Is Jack Campbell the guy? Great, figure it out. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, well, I did. The reason why I did bring that up is because I saw a TikTok earlier today, and this kid was mentioning that the Leafs are in a very similar situation to the Capitals in 2017,
Sure. Yeah.
where Braden kind of got injured and whatnot, and then Grubauer came in, and then Grubauer kind of shit the bed, and then Braden Holtby took over in the playoffs. But I think what could happen is you put Freddie on the LTIR because that frees up some cap space that we can play with until the playoffs. And then you sign or trade whoever you need. And then from there, hopefully we can ride Jack until the playoffs, even into the playoffs, and then see how Freddie's feeling. That way it gives him time to heal and whatnot.
You give him the old Kucherov treatment, hey?
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, LTIR, I think, is retroactive. So I think if you were to put Freddie on, I'm pretty sure it's his entire $5 million that comes off the books. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's how it works. So like that would open up a lot of flexibility. And I'd love to see Kyle Dubas and the 3,000 salary cap wizards they have on staff play with that. I would love to see them figure out a way to utilize that $5 million.
Yeah. Well, I won't hold you for much longer, but I just wanted to thank you for coming on and for being my first guest. And if anybody is looking for you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but at Clark Monroe is my Twitter account. You can find me there. The show I work for is the Rod Peterson Show. So if you're interested in that, it's a daily sports talk show. We're national, so we talk about everything. We cover pretty much all of the sports, including like the CFL right now is a big one for us because how it's dead and we're trying to figure out what's going on with it. So there's a lot there, but we talk NHL every day. We talk junior hockey every day, all sorts of NFL talk. So we have great guests. So that's at Rod Peterson Show on Twitter, and then just search Rod Peterson Show anywhere and you'll find it. My show that I host is called The Squadcast, and that's on Tuesday nights. It's at 7 p.m. Mountain time. So if you're out east, it's 9 p.m. So you can check that out. Again, it's on Tuesday nights. This week, I think we're having Ken Reed on from Sportsnet, so that'll be
nice.
Good. Excited for that. Always good. We've had him on once before, and it was a riot. So looking forward to that. And then TikTok at Producer Clark is my handle there, and I've just been having fun with it. Like I'm just about to turn 30 here. I got TikTok last year when everybody got TikTok last year in March or whenever it was. So I've been on it for like a year. And the reason I got it is because I just wanted to check out all the funny stuff that was going on. And then, after a few months, you start to see like, there's not a ton of sports content on here. And the stuff that I was seeing was like, you've seen all of it, like the 8-year-old kids who post a picture or a video of them like watching something or whatever. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to start making a few things. And it was partially to promote my show, but some of it's just me wanting to vent a little bit more than I already do. So that was where I started doing like the random trade stuff that I'm doing on there, the Olympic roster stuff. Like that's just stuff I talk about all the time. So it was just fun to just make minute-long videos on it. So recently, like, again, I had no plans for this to be big, and it hasn't gotten huge, but I'm starting to get some numbers, and it's just kind of mind blowing. So if you want to check me out there, we're just having fun. It's over at Producer Clark, so you can check me out there and see what's going on. So that's kind of where you can find me. I'm a little bit everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. This has been a blast. Good job, buddy.
Thank you.